Morning, right?
It's taking a minute to, there it goes.
Good?
Yep.
All right, we're live. I appreciate it. Everybody figuring out to change your venue. I don't know about you, but when I put in 807 Capitol Street in Google, it doesn't know where it's at. I knew where EMS was. I'm making sure I had the right spot, so. But, anyway, so got the minutes and stuff out, and, wanted to, well, first of all, the next meeting.
Yes.
For consistency's sake, and then hopefully we're going to go to full tax commission if you were back and forth. Or at the county, county building, so. Real quickly review the minutes, agenda and minutes from the last meeting for any additions or corrections, or the notes per se. Mike did a nice job of capturing, kind of what we talked about last meeting, I thought. And I apologize, I meant to bring the big pieces of paper back to him back on the wall and I didn't. And so we have our minutes, they kind of encompass the notes, I should say, they kind of encompass all of that. And so any concerns or anything with the minutes and the notes?
The only thing I would say is when I read it, it kind of indicated that this was just for things that the county could do to improve it. And I guess I was thinking that we were wanting to collaborate as a county with any and all organizations in it.
Right.
Right, that's, I threw in that stakeholders term
Okay,
to sort of cover that.
okay.
Yeah, to update that, thanks Mike for pointing that out. The task force, our mission, I changed that to the mission of our task force to develop proactive strategic growth recommendations for the Yankton County stakeholders, not commission,
So
stakeholders.
that could be school district.
Anybody.
Okay.
Yep, for the long-term
Okay, good.
economic
Thank you.
Yeah,
growth and citizens.
yeah, it's based on your comment. Really.
All right, any questions or concerns about the minutes? If you have those with you, we'll have to work from them today, which would be handy, so. Since I didn't have a big piece of the paper. Any comments, questions about the agenda? Pretty straightforward. Okay, I am gonna throw in, appreciate Bob reminding me last week that I missed the public comments, and so I will open it up for public comment.
Well, watching the last two meetings I've been at, one thing I noticed that seems to be neglected is education. And you just brought that up here earlier on that. Is what can our school districts do to entice businesses come to us because they're growing a population and they work for the business. Watching the last two meetings I've been at, one thing I noticed that seems to be neglected or else is education. But the school system, you just brought that up here earlier on that. They started adding in the school district. I remember when I graduated from high school 50 years ago. I seen the boring.
Gary, you turn it down.
I'm trying to, yeah, it is, it's. Hold on here. It's off, but
That's the internet.
where's the other speaker?
I thought Mike did a nice job of kind of capturing the notes, what, not only what I had here, but kind of the conversation, and the categorization. I don't remember, did we categorize that as a group or did you do that on your own?
No, I went through my handwritten scribbles and tried to figure out a way that I could put them under broad headings. And then include comments that came from a lot of different people that would fit under those headings. And so the headings I came up with were leadership and communication, utilities, and what was the third one? Oh, how did our comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance become the way it is? Those were the three umbrellas that seemed like most of the other comments fit under.
So I just want to point out, and I appreciate that, Mike, I just want to point out for the group then that, you know, we had the short list of stuff in page 2 and 3, I guess, of the notes.
Right.
That to continue on, whether or not these categories continue to end up being the categories at the end of the day or not. We can adjust and so on and so forth. There's nothing saying we haven't decided any of that yet per se. So,
Right.
so anyway, okay. I want to focus then back on the strategic planning and some of the brainstorming process. You know, based on the conversations we had last week, you know, and just to kind of touch on them real quickly, relaxing restrictions, we talked about the different various sectors that we would look at from the zoning restrictions there. We talked about comprehensive plan. We talked about business incubator district, expanding inmate population, professional grant writing, opt-outs and adding taxes. Sanitary, there's, you know, a lot of conversation on you know, utilities and those systems and the capacities of it, and how do we, you know, understand that and potentially need to grow that appropriately. Leveraging townships, communities, towns, and so on and so forth, and more utility review. Other ideas like Dark Sky International was brought up, tourism, utilizing Napa Junction, talked a little bit about the tax with SB 96, leveraging the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which was on our list already. Missouri, leveraging Missouri River, potential for data centers, agriculture, learning loss retention of graduates from our schools, regional success. Again, more tax can, bottle tax and rewards for investment. For the ideas of what's going on. So I'd like to take some time and just, again, open it up to see if we can add more ideas to that. I'm sure, you know, some of you had conversations outside of this room or had some thoughts that you wanted to get on the wall that we didn't get captured last time, and kind of stress us a little bit to come up with those. I will open that up for new ideas. Do that break would hurt.
A lot of my points were hit on the first brainstorming session, but a few things that I've been kind of mulling over and talking to a few people are like citizen-owned charging networks for EVs might be something that something to look at, where the county can, you know, help install the stations, maybe help with accessing low interest financing maybe, or something like that, or
You said, did you say citizen owned?
citizen owned, so like county citizen owned, if possible. And then, yeah, and then just depending on what we have for permitting stuff, if we can simplify that at all. I don't know even what that is. That was a came up, and then that would of course tie into, you know, our tourism side and logistics and delivering vehicles, stuff like that, you know.
Sure.
In my world, even though we kind of fought it a little bit, AI is becoming such a huge thing, and then autonomous vehicles and such is such a huge buzzword right now, and everyone's kind of looking into how to implement that stuff and how to capitalize on those things. So if we can have some sort of infrastructure set up to be able to be a better welcoming place to be able to have some of that stuff coming in, you know, tourists and other like shipping companies that have that stuff and things like that.
Really?
If we can set that up, that might help.
Can you take 1 minute real quickly and just tell us about your world? I don't know that I know your world.
So Ethan Paul, owner of Grassland Heating and Cooling in town. I come from HVAC distribution for the last 5 years up in the upper Midwest. I've done a lot of small contractor business development and things like that. Kind of lift up that industry a bit. So that's kind of where my realm is and where my expertise is, small contractor, small business, and then kind of the logistics side from the computer. Yeah. But, to add on that a little bit too, so looking at key places or things, we can talk to, farmers that have kind of highway frontage, maybe something like that. There's a lot of areas that now, again, I don't know everything about floodplains and things like that, but if there's areas that aren't usable to build on or something like that, maybe on the front side of it, you can get a charging station or something like that, just this one off.
Sure.
We've faced some pushback on that in some areas that would make sense, like along Highway 81 and 46 to rezone to commercial for exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's taken it. That's, it's a balancing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's not
Mhm.
a really good idea, but in, for example, 46, 81 Junction, just to the east, they have where they sales for feeders and stuff like that. That's a great example of what you're saying, but we'd have to phrase it in that way that, hey, this is, we're gonna rezone this from something else to commercial, but the benefits are here. I mean, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, because that's state highway, right? That's not something the county has to
Right,
pay for and maintain, and you're getting trucks in and out of it.
exactly.
That's a good point.
So piggybacking off of that topic, as we talk about strategic planning, I know the city in their planning process takes a look at where should we have, they call it job center growth now, as opposed to commercial or industrial. That's maybe something where the county should take a look at, where are some areas that if we're going to have growth of industry, where should we try to place those based upon availability of utilities and ease of access, so you're not having to have more paved roads or anything else that needs to be maintained, that you're appropriately placing it within the county.
Doesn't it come back then to the comments we've had about it's probably the cities for that type of growth, or very close to the city limits.
Close to the city limits. See, I was just thinking driving back from Utica and seeing Urshman Engineering kind of plunked out in the middle of ag. Would that be an area to try and build out? Because then you have Slowy's a little bit closer. And if we're developing housing in the county, the work that's happening down on 314 between that and Highway 52, that seems like a great place to develop out housing if you're moving industry more up to the highway.
We also talked about utilizing that at the junction rail, and there's a location there,
We included that when we did that sanitary study.
Yeah.
We included, a sewer line to Napa, and actually then we included Highway 214, just like you said, because that's already a state highway, and at the time, you didn't say there was zero interest. But the work is done now, and people can see that, but
It seems to me like what we've just been talking about here sort of fits under the idea of updating the comprehensive plan. Because that's what a comprehensive plan is supposed to be for, where you think again, where do we want our development to go? Where do we want the commercial zone to be? Where do we want residential housing to go? Kinds of things, and that has to coordinate, of course, very closely with our utilities.
So when you use the phrase update the comprehensive plan, there is an existing one for land use?
You think about it, the comprehensive plan was certain in 2003, and I don't believe it really focused on that. I think it was more of a marketing document. A lot of the things that are in it are easily accessible on the internet now. Totally comprehensive plan. But a comprehensive plan to me should include that.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Had a thing come up this week. Had a call from, person who lives in the county, and, his father and mother lived on a farm. And, they passed, and, they want to, you want to pass, their home onto one of their children. But they don't want to pass all the buildings to that child for estate reasons on equality between kids. And to me, it's absolutely ridiculous that we have setbacks on something that's been there for, I don't know, 50, 70 years. And I think we need to get more authority to Gary in his office to make common sense work rather than have a wall put up for everything.
What do you mean by he didn't want to give all the buildings in the homestead? Is that what you're saying? Is that?
Yeah, they wanted to deed
Like certain buildings, so like.
4.5, 5 acres for the house, and then the rest of the farm place still remains in the ownership
The
of the
rest of the farm, like place to include buildings, or are you talking farm land fair?
buildings.
Okay, see, and I think the reason we do that, Don, is you don't wanna run a line in between of a farmstead and have a grain bin on this side and a house here and a machine shed.
The house and the green bed have been there for years.
But what I'm saying is
Years.
that gets
If
divided.
you want kids to come back to the home to farm, you gotta cooperate a little
I
bit.
get what you're saying, but when you do that, where's the water line? Where's the electricity line? And you do it to two parcels, and that parcel gets divided and sold, then you have a mess.
So, I guess the question I have is, it sounds like, make sure I understand your point there, Don, is that this is, something that today's process that family would come to essentially Gary and then go through the zoning planning process to see if there needed to be some variance or something like that made to accommodate that situation. So we have a process for
Yeah.
that. What you're saying is that you would like for Gary to have the authority to maybe usurp the process.
Well, he does, and then with plats now, and they just come to a plat approval.
We used to use variances.
Yeah.
But about 10 years ago, with the change of county commission,
Right.
a couple of people on the county commission didn't want to use variances, and I don't know, have there been one
Yeah.
or two since
There's
then?
concerns about lawsuits is the biggest thing that
The word
changed.
variance means something. There's a reason for it.
So I want to make sure I capture your point from a strategic planning standpoint, Don. I mean, you and I talked before about, we talked as a group as well about, potentially loosening up some of the zoning regulations so that people can do more things that they want to do, i.e. through Gary's office without having to come to get special permission and so on and so forth. Certainly there's a planning commission or zoning commission that did deal in a, what do we call the zoning?
Variance.
Well, not variance, but the group.
The planning and zoning board.
Planning and zoning
Oh,
board
yeah, yeah.
that deals with that every month, variances to that. But I think your bigger point is we, in your perspective, we've maybe gone too tight and then don't allow variances. And so it's difficult. And so we're trying to be easier, quote unquote, to do business with from a land use standpoint. Is that fair?
Close.
So let me repeat something that I'm not sure that I heard correctly
Okay.
then. So if somebody, whatever scenario Don's talking about, if they wanted to do that, they can't go to Gary and have him present something for a replat?
They'd have to probably do a variance, and I appreciate where you're coming from, but I think it's a really bad idea to gerrymander up a farmstead and cut it in half and then split it. Right now, two different owners have it. Who owns the water line? Who owns?
Yeah, that's not.
Well, that's what
Well,
Don's.
right, but what I'm saying is the authority that Gary has. So if someone wants to do something, as long as it falls within the current ordinances, he can do whatever he needs to behind the scenes to bring it forward and.
Correct.
We
and
did
offer the
5 of
replat.
them.
Correct.
We did 5
Correct.
of them Tuesday night without any problem.
And so he doesn't have the authority to do something that's not allowed within
That
zoning
would be a
though.
variance.
That's a variance that goes to the commissioner committee.
And there are some counties that have, the commission has some
flexibility on setbacks and things like Don said, that allow them to adjust things for certain projects or things, but you know, it's one of those things that you gotta be leery of what, you know, what's gonna be coming down the line when you start changing those rules and cause there's always a consequence. And all of a sudden you're gonna get 50 others that are gonna wanna do the same thing and go, well, you set precedents here.
Yeah.
We wanna do the same thing and
That's the key is that you set a precedent and then the next guy comes in and says, well, you let him do it. Why can't I do it? Well,
exactly.
the first guy's request made sense, like Don's talking about, but the next guy's request makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so how do we explain that?
I think,
Be development friendly at the same time,
Right.
because sometimes these scenarios, absolutely, to Don's point, make sense logistically for family development, passing things down. But then to Dan's point, when you look a little bit deeper, it's very, very complicated. It's not just as simple as you get this and you get those two and then we're done.
But should it be the county's, you know, to worry about that utility? Do you know what I mean? Because there should be easements on in the tie of all that so that they get,
To me,
yeah, that they would have that
to
understanding.
me, if they wanna do it and they wanna have a separate DY water hookup, they would go to DY water to see if they can get one.
Right.
or work through an easement or whatever the process is.
Yeah.
I think there is a process today for all of this that you're talking about, Don. I think, and I wrote up here, Don, just to, you know, greater flexibility with variances and be a user-friendly county.
We don't use variances.
Pardon?
We
You're
have.
gonna say,
Well,
Say it again?
we don't use variances.
I understood. And so, you know, I'm new to that commission, and so I've been asking a lot of questions, trying to gain that same understanding, because the last time I quote unquote used it, when we were building our house, it was I'll call it quote unquote, more friendly to the user scenario, and I was able to get the variances I wanted, and we moved on and so on and so forth. Now, since then, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the
Hardship. It has to be a hardship.
it has to be a hardship, and the zoning regulations were modified to make it a little more user-friendly right out of the gate, so that Gary could just issue the building permit and away he went. But then clamp down on the variances that are allowed then, with the mindset of, it's litigious, you know, I mean, we could get sued, and they're trying to avoid that cost and so on and so forth. I think, just like political parties and political, you know, pressure in the country and in the states and in the counties and stuff like that, it's gonna ebb and flow. The pendulum's gonna swing one way and swing another way. And in my opinion, it was swung one way and now it's swung the other way, and probably needs to come back to the middle again. That's an opinion, but it seems like that's the perspective I'm seeing as a newbie to that commission.
quick, bit of clarification on that, when Don and I started, like out in your area. A building over 1,200 square
Yeah.
foot, it required a variance, and then to Don and my credit, what we said is this doesn't make sense, we would do 2, 3, 4 variances.
Right,
So we changed the zoning ordinance
right.
we increased the size and said, now, if you want to build one bigger than this, it's a conditional use, which still allowed public input out, but it was a much easier process.
Right,
And so in that regard, we have less variances because we changed the rules.
exactly.
And then what we did with what Don is talking about, when you and I served together initially, the planning commission, we did all kinds of variants for lot sizes, right? We did 3 or 4. And then we changed the zoning ordinance to allow Gary to plat out a homestead on his authority, and then that plat, right, came to the commission to approve it. So we have less variances because we significantly relaxed the rules. And on Tuesday, we had about 5 plats come through. Every one of those would have been a variance a few years ago, but if they're not, so that's what we're putting this plats.
We relaxed the rules, so it made it easier to get them through.
Yeah,
We also tightened up the application of the new rule so that I think, you know, I think Gary's essentially convincing people, don't bother, don't waste your time because you're not gonna get that through. You know what I mean?
Well, if it doesn't make sense.
Right, right. And there were some as an example that, building 6 inches from the property line didn't make sense. And so that was relatively easy to kind of get through, but then there are others that are gonna come up where it's like, this just makes sense to do it, but because of lack of precedence and so on and so forth, it's like, it may very well get a no because of a lack of, risk tolerance, because of risk tolerance. An issue there that I think is where Don is going, and we need to, loosen it up to be more user friendly. And, so,
I just feel like if I own a piece of property in ag area, ag zoned area, and I wanted to bring my son back to the area to farm, to say that I can't use that existing house, it has to be torn down. Doesn't
Can
make
you give
sense.
me an example where that's happened?
well,
Is that
I'm not gonna say their names.
let's we captured the item up here as a being more user friendly, take those conversations beyond.
So
We can get into that more detail.
So would the bottom line be allowing more variances would enhance economic development?
I think there's something there, Jerry, to your point that there's a natural amount of that needs to happen in a changing environment. You know what I mean? If all of a sudden there's a lot of people that want to do X, but the rules don't allow it, we got to make sure their ears are wide open. So we're hearing that so we can look at it and go, okay, let's put some structure around that and allow some of that because there's a demand for it. You know what I mean? If the system is set up so much that it doesn't allow that to even be heard, that's a problem. You know what I mean? So whether that is change the zoning reg so that Gary can just process and then it's easy, or run through variances. Hey, we're getting hit with lots of these all the time. We got to take a look at that. We just have to be very deft to those situations so that we are friendly to those people and then whatever that demand is. That's my opinion. That's a newbie on that.
And we have made a lot of those changes the last couple of years. I mean, we have buildable lots now for ag down to 10 acres, used to be 20 acres. We downsized some of the other residential zones and things. So we have did a lot of those type of things the last couple of years. And it all helps. And you can tell that it's made a difference with people that do want their kids to come back and live by the farm and things like that. So
We had probably one of the most restrictive zoning ordinances as far as building in the rural areas in the state. We were at 28, well, I have this pulled up to Minnehaha. We're at 2 acres right now. Minnehaha's at 1 acre, Lincoln's at 1 acre, Bond Home is at 5. Turner's at 2.5, Clay's at 2, Union's at 2.5, at 10.
and we rezoned over.
Yeah.
We rezoned over 200 acres of rural zoning that was 20 acres to allow for 1 acre lots. And so that was a big change also.
Well, I think one of the items that's going to come out of this for us to focus on is looking at our zoning and deciding, we want to make some recommendations there on some changes that would be beneficial.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a second. There's a reason why we had the 20 acre and now 10 acre restriction on subdivision. And the reason is that to keep the city out of the county, basically. And to put it in a more friendly way, farmers need to be able to farm. And if you have too many residences in a rural area, what's going to end up happening is that there will be conflict between people who are trying to farm and people who have a residence out there. Because you have the ag cat flying over, bringing something, we don't know what it is, but it's out there, and mom's out in the backyard with the kids, and she doesn't like that. And the next thing you know, you have a conflict between these people. So let me propose a middle path. There are places in Yankton County that are clearly ideal for farming. Up around Utica, that kind of place. On the other hand, there are some places in Yankton County that don't really lend themselves to row crop farming. Most of the James River Valley is that way. We have other valleys and outcroppings of rocks, the Utica Hills, for example, and that are not really suitable to row crop farming. And in fact, the people that own them probably don't consider them to be as valuable as the land that is suitable to row crop farming. So if we wanted to find a middle path, it might be that we could identify areas, just like Nancy was talking about. Where do you want your commercial development be? Well, where do we want our residential development to be? We could find places in Yankton County that would be easily subdividable into 5-acre plots. And that would actually increase the value of those properties if some rich doctor goes out there and builds a $500,000 house on it, rather than just having it sit there as a bank with a bunch of oak trees on it. So it might be, if this would be a potential for a comprehensive plan discussion, for example, identify those areas that might be more appropriate for residential development, identify those areas that absolutely should continue to be row crop and livestock farming, and identify those areas that should be commercial development and that are contiguous to already developed properties. So to me, as a pilot, I think of things as a map. And we should probably look at Yankton County from a God's eye view and say, well, where should we put things? Where, and use that as a template for our development of a new comprehensive plan.
So within the zoning, are you able to create, like in the lakeside area or whatever, you could say, well, down there, you can have 1-acre parcels for a house, but in this other area, you can have 5. But to your point, in the row crop area, it has to be 10.
Right
If
now,
that's-
it's all.
But are you able
Yeah.
to do that within the zoning for Yankton?
Before we get too deep into this, I want to express an opinion. How many of us in this room have a 401k? That's their retirement plan.
Not even.
You know what it is for a farmer?
Yeah, it's
The land.
right.
And if he wants to sell 5 acres of land for $50 million, he should be able to sell it for $50 million.
So you're trying to just reduce the size of the lot size for subdivision.
But if you get into that map making and different sizes, don't you put a thumb on the scale, then suddenly this guy's land that could go to 5 acres is worth more than this guy's that's 10 or 20. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a danger when you start marking the map that way, isn't there?
That's true. That's true.
I want to give a perspective to, growing up by Utica, I've been out there a long time, and when I rode the bus to school, Yankton School, it was wonderful. Not an extra seat. Now it's my kids and my brother's kids, and then one kid that comes in from out of district. That's it. And we gotta be careful about hollowing out our ag community, and most of the people that move out are farmers' kids anyway, or have a close connection to that, so, in my opinion, it's a bad thing to have nobody live in the country, because we lose that ag connection. We all have ag connection. Next generation has a lot less than us. The generation after that might not have any. And so there's a balancing act, like all you guys have mentioned, and could it be, there's a lot less farmsteads in Yankton County now than there were. There's a lot less than.
Every county in the United States, I would think would be that way.
Yeah. I think we need to preserve the heritage. How we do that, that's the tough part.
But then on the flip side of that conversation, if I'm remembering this correctly, that was part of the hog barn conversation was we don't want these homes out here because now it restricts ag from doing what they want to do to diversify their revenue source. Because that one home is out there that might want to have that connection to agriculture.
When great grandpa Yankton homesteaded in 1886, have to observe the people that are out there, put those things where they belong. So zoning exists, I think I maybe said this one time, zoning exists to not for economic development, but protect safety, health, and welfare of the citizens. That's why we have zoning. Want to do just economic development, get rid of all zoning, get rid of all protections for all people. And we can be a great community like Charles makes down. They don't have any zoning. And they're a dying community, right? So this is the balancing act that we have to do is protect property rights for everybody. It's not easy.
But you
The
can't-
only way to do that is through zoning.
It's about impossible to put any kind of new restriction out there and not have a pro for some and a negative for
Well,
others.
but
That
it's
is
a
just
balancing
natural.
act, and
Exactly.
we brought up hog confinement, it's a great example.
Yep.
They have a lot of different, well, you guys probably don't know this. We permitted the largest hog confinement ever in Yankton County a couple months ago up in Janesville. Any of you guys even hear it?
Nope.
Well, why did that happen? Right? Because the other rights went to every one of their neighbors, talked to them. Their neighbors came in and signed off on it and said, yes, we want this. They're gonna take care of us. They put in a bunch of, groundwater monitoring. They're gonna do trees. They did it right.
Yep.
All right. So, and I think that's a success story maybe that hasn't been shared. That's one case, and the other case from however many years ago wasn't like that.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what led to all the conflict. So it can be done right, it has been done right, and that's why we need to. Our zoning is set up the way it is because of what happened in the past, right?
It's always gonna be that way.
Yeah,
Always gonna be
that's
reflective of the recent history.
an absolute model. They did a fabulous.
That's what I
job.
was gonna say. Well, is there a means to put that as an example out there
Yeah.
for whatever type of development? It doesn't have to be that specific.
Yeah.
In someone trying to develop a piece of ground,
Mhm.
here is a guidance of how this plan or what you want to develop could be successful.
I give Gary and his team a lot of credit for working on how to do that behind the scene. He doesn't take a lot of credit, he deserves a lot. But that's an example of how it was done right where the neighbors agreed. Everybody moved forward, no lawsuits, no fighting.
Versus,
Yeah.
construction starting and then somebody go, what's going on next to me?
Yeah.
So Terry, what you're saying is that would apply, it seems to me like that would apply for the CAFOs. It would probably also apply for residential development. Here's one that really worked well.
Right, and any, whether it's residential, industrial, commercial, capital, whatever, when you have like a success story like that, like you're saying, is that something, I don't know, from the county or from somewhere, a governmental body that could be presented as, here's a model that would make this successful.
Kind of lessons learned.
Right,
Yeah.
So one of the things that you run into in zoning and planning, is of the 23,000 people that live in the county. Probably close to 18,000 live in the lake area or the city of Yankton or one of the small towns. And they vote against smell. How many points have you had on smell on any of the hog facilities that were put in 7 years ago?
Yeah, not since it all passed, but yeah, it was a regular thing for quite a few areas for a while. But technology changes and it gets better every time a new one is built, and so you just don't hear those issues as much now it's more, they assume that's gonna be an issue a lot of times, even if it isn't, so.
Can I ask a question? So like the slug barn issue keeps coming up, and why do we think that that is so good for development? Because, I mean, I know GOED is investing heavily in the new Smithfield plant that they did in what, about $90 million in TIF? And I know they got a keep the new hog plant, but from what I've seen, a hog confinement doesn't really generate much more revenue than a new house, right? But it also has a massive effect on our roads, right? I know when Greg Bauer came from the DOT, and maybe this is something well, you guys need to understand too, is the amount of truck traffic that comes with is absolutely astronomical. As far as what it's a minimum of 2 trucks per week, very minimum. And each one of those trucks does they say the equivalent of about 9,600 cars, right? A fully loaded truck. And so we're talking about 900 and so one of those confinements about the equivalent of 950 to 60,000 cars a year. Is the revenue of that paying for the damage it does? And the reason I ask this, Hutchinson County has the most hogs of any county in the state, right? They just had to do a huge road and bridge out there. If this was the answer, why isn't Hutchinson County so successful with all those that they built? Why have in subsequent years have they actually had to increase taxes if these are gonna pay for it? You know, I thought when a new house that does minimum damage pays as much or close to the revenue of one of these other ones that is highly damaging to our infrastructure, is that, you know, we need to have these opportunities, I understand, but we should be asking ourselves, is the revenue that this brings in paying for the damage that it does?
So it's a good point, Dan, and I made a note here, the true total cost impacts, you know, of the development that's going on, you know. I think that's something that always has to be considered, when we're looking at making changes and allowing things to happen, that there's an impact out there, so. Certainly.
Let me just point out, and I guess this is just an education. Is some of that though due to, and now why we have the capitals? Because I can remember as a kid going out to Grandpa's farm. I mean, they had it all. They had hogs, you know, the sows, they had butchers, they had, you know, feeder cattle, they had milking cattle, they had chickens, they had the whole thing. And now it's down to feeder cattle. That's it. Hogs are gone, cows are gone, the chickens are gone, milking's gone.
Vertical integration is what.
Well, is
what
it because the economies of scale, i.e., you know, we can make a better profit if we just do milking, or we just do hogs, or we just do feeder
I
cattle?
think the big expansion, I know when we raised hogs, they went down to 6 cents and everybody went bankrupt. And the way it is now, and you know, the people that build these hog barns, they don't actually own them.
Right.
They're owned by
They're just,
the Smithfield company, right?
right,
And so then we have to, when Dad and Grandpa did it, the vet was local, the feed was local, the pigs were local, all of that. That's not the case anymore.
No.
They're getting shipped in from
No.
Illinois or wherever, right? And not here, yeah, Canada. The feed comes from Taylor. It's
Right.
not coming from here.
right.
And then when they're shipped to Sioux City, to Seaboard Triumph or Smithfield, both of which are foreign owned, and Seaboard Triumph is, when they set it up, it's deliberately set up for international sales. So a lot of that isn't being consumed in the country and then they build. So the only thing from the county's perspective is we can tax that barn, right? That's it, right?
Right.
But we have to pay for the road damage and the pigs coming in, road damage for everything else. And the question I'm seeing is, does it pay for it?
Right.
I'm sure it does.
So my question to that is, not thinking about just CAFOs in general, just thinking about businesses that have a high amount of traffic. Do I hear you saying that there should be either a road use agreement or some additional fees attached to any business that has a high amount of road traffic?
We can't put fees on, but putting them on a state highway would be a big thing. I mean, here's some photos, if you guys wanna see of some of the damage that these things.
Well, I don't think we need to go down that road. I was just trying to go down to the point of, if we're trying to decide what type of development we want, is the amount of truck traffic tied to that development something that should be considered?
I think you have to,
Sure.
as part of the process. That's, I think, a total cost impact, having an understanding of it.
But is that something that goes along with any business right now that is wanting to come into the county? What if there's no rezoning, there's nothing that has to happen? They just wanna come-
Gravel pits as well, because we run into a serious issue with, you get a whole bunch of, trucks that go on, open up a gravel pit, and they can destroy, you know, we do a $300 conditional use permit is what we get, but then a $2 million stretch of road gets destroyed. That doesn't help Yankton County.
But if there's a piece of property right now that is zoned appropriately for a business to come in,
It could happen.
there's no other fees associated with that or no regulation. So we would only be doing that on a rezone or conditional use type
I
scenario.
don't think you can put a condition like that on a rezone. But
Right.
you put on a conditional use permit, but they're hard to enforce too. From older ones, they had conditions on that weren't even specific enough, so we went to our state's attorney to try, and they said that wasn't specific enough to enforce it. So yeah, the counties are at a real disadvantage as far as that goes.
So it's fair to say there are limitations, but there are also impact. Every consumer out there, every person out there, based on their actions and their wishes or desires, and put a house up here, do this. Even if it's within the guidelines we give them, can have a negative or a positive impact in the community. And that's something I don't know that we want to try to control. We want to steer a little.
This is why we should decide what we want.
Right.
And then go after it, rather than sitting around here and waiting until somebody comes to us and then deciding whether or not they're gonna destroy our roads. We should be proactive,
Correct me if I'm
not
wrong.
reactive.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, that's the purpose of the zoning ordinance, because the zoning ordinance says it allows this here, it allows this here, it allows this here, it doesn't allow this here. And that's designed
Right.
such to fit, in theory, a strat plan that says this is where we want stuff.
Right,
And then be open to the fact that times change and
Right.
things change and new demands come in, and sometimes that plan then has to be adjusted.
I guess, I'm probably more in the camp of where Dan was, where the zoning ordinance is designed to protect the property rights of the people that want to do things and the people that are then impacted by those things. But I think that's the purpose of it. It seems to me like our comprehensive plan should say, here's what we want. Here's what we want to open ourselves up to. And then we actually go after it. I mean, I'm not afraid to go into anybody's office. I don't care if it's Microsoft or the Bill Gates or whoever it might be, and pitch it. But we first need to decide what we want and then go pitch it. I'm sorry, I'm gonna beat a dead horse here, but for example, if we would somehow or another figure out how to put sanitary sewer just along Highway 52, we don't have to include all the developments on either side. Just along Highway 52, go along at the base of Chalkstone Road over to the city's sanitary disposal plant. It would open up that area to appropriate development. When I say appropriate, I mean Cabela's, I mean a big restaurant, I mean something that is themed to the outdoor person that zips up and down Highway 52 all summer. They see it there and they go, hey, let's stop here. That's facilitating appropriate development. But first we have to decide we want that kind of development. Another example is Napa Junction. Napa Junction is totally different. And however, it might be well suited to some sort of commercial development. Because it's right on the railroad track. Am I right that it has natural gas to it?
No, because
That's the issue. It doesn't.
there's plenty of electric out there.
Yeah, so,
But the problem with Napa.
Yeah.
The current property owners are not interested in conversations about developing,
right,
because I've asked them.
That's part.
right, that's what happened.
Talked about that.
Cargo doesn't.
And that's what happened with our mall too, that we had a young guy that was full of vim and vigor and decided and figured out a way to do it. The Yankton Mall was a dead letter until somebody came along and decided, I'm gonna make that happen. And it could happen, but again, we're ahead of ourselves here. Our purpose should be to decide what we want and then figure out a way to get it. And whatever we want should be things that are not gonna beat up our roads and don't get any revenue out of it. It's gonna be the kind of things that are forward looking. What should Yankton County look like 20 years from now? That's an example is sanitary sewer on Highway 50.
And just to make the obvious point, but I'll say it anyway, there's a lot of design countries, I'll just say communist countries where they do that kind of planning.
Yeah,
And they never get there because the reality is the people that are out in the market are the ones who have the needs that we can't begin to understand what that's gonna be
True.
5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
But we just need to make sure we're friendly to that environment, whatever that may be. So,
Can I switch gears on something?
go a different direction?
Yeah,
It depends, Dan.
So-
Depends.
so development, I think that the main reason we're doing this is the county, we need to capture all the revenue that we can to pay for the things that we need. And I don't know how many of you guys know, our discretionary formula is. You guys all know, understand that. Okay, so discretionary formula is not discretionary, imagine that.
Well, technically it is,
Um,
but you get to vote on what it is.
Well, but it's not discretionary in how
It
it's.
can be zero. It can be 100.
So right now, Yankton County, we're doing pretty good, as far as development from our surrounding counties, but we're looking at about $21 million that we are not fully taxing. These are structures that are already built, in Yankton County. And so how our discretionary formula works is on agricultural and commercial properties, once they're built and we meet the criteria, the first year it's taxed at 0, 40, 60, or somewhere along.
It
that.
starts at 20, if it's never zero.
So, okay, so we're not capturing that full, the full growth of that. Is there any interest in looking over that and changing that? I talked to our director of equalization, and she would be, she'd be fine with changing that model. Some other counties, what they're using is a 20, 40, 100, 100, 100. And that way, we would be capturing the full value and full property taxes a couple of years earlier. And talking with her, I had a really great conversation. Smart lady, she says that people aren't building a new commercial property or structure to get a tax break. They're building because they want to come in and invest in the community. They want their business to expand. The tax break, while it is nice, that's not the reason people are doing it. And some other counties are starting to change this, and just wanted to bring that up.
So,
I have a list of all the discretionary formulas for every county and how they're all bracketed out. And to Dan's point, a lot of them use the same one that Yankton does, but they are all across the board. Some also have housing discretionary formulas. And it does sound simple, but it is very complicated for just the variety of ways that it's implemented. And that I do agree with Dan that we should take a look at that. When you were talking with her, is there an opportunity to change the price point of where the discretionary applies? Cause I believe is it 30,000 or more for commercial? They're automatically in on that. Can you make that 50 or 100? So that,
We looked at raising that to 100,000 and there was zero interest in the legislation.
So
and
just,
when did that come through? When,
It didn't go through, the guy from Moody County came to us and he proposed the bill and we suggested where it was and then he went.
because I would think that would be something we could work with our legislators and to have local control of setting that dollar amount.
I don't think there's any appetite in the state legislature to do that, because I've talked to the couple. And the one that's going to bring. But it was an election too.
so just real quickly, just make sure I understand, is this commercial property only?
Commercial property and, so if I go build a new grain bin,
Yep.
right, it would apply just to that grain bin, not the whole farm.
And so the tax formula, your levy, your value, your appraised value, or whatever it is, it's prorated 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 over a 5-year period.
Yeah, and so if you build a brand new commercial building,
Yep.
this would automatically apply to that.
But what we have done in some of our agreements with developers is they opt out of discretionary. Or
If they take the tips, they usually do.
well, we require that as a part of our stuff, that it's not optional. They
Is
don't
that a-
have
Is
to,
that
but
on your tip or?
it built, the one that we have worked with was directly on a tip that we
And see,
said.
the TIF people, they don't want the discretionary formula, because that would reduce the tax that is getting paid back, so they generally don't, take the TIF, or take the discretionary formula, because they actually, it would be detrimental, but on the non-TIFs ones is where it would be beneficial, and it's just a conversation to have. The feedback I get is a guy's gonna build a new machine shop, or they're not doing it for a couple $1,000 they're saving. And the way I look, yeah, with $21 million, that's really not being taxed now. Is that something we want to look at?
Yeah, what is,
You'll be accused of raising taxes.
Well,
Well, a lot of people,
not if it's your idea.
a lot of people don't even know that that's part of, they build and then realize, oh, I get a
break?
tax break on that? I didn't even know, because to Dan's point, they're not building for the tax break. That just is kind of cream on top of that. But there are some counties that have been 0% for all 5 years. And some don't use it at all, so they're just 100% for all 5 years, so.
So what's the math on the 21 million, Dan? Just so I understand it.
I have the breakdown.
Is that the shortfall versus the 100% starting year one?
That is the amount of value that we could be taxing, but we aren't, and that would go from everything that is under the discretionary formula. That's not, and according to Michelle too, if something has started on the discretionary formula, we have to have that continue for the full 5 years. It would just be everything new after that.
The 21 million is the value of the property.
That isn't being fully taxed.
It's not a tax revenue.
Yeah, it wouldn't be $21 million in
Right,
revenue, it
right.
would be, and it's so hard to calculate it, because commercial is taxed different than ag. And we're talking, yeah, you build a new grain mill, right? The amount of revenue on that is actually pretty small, because you can't, what's the value on your grain mill? You can't take that out.
But she obviously has a schedule that says,
That's on page
and if
2.
you look, I understand, if you look at, oh, maybe that answered the question, but if you look backwards 5 years, you know what that impact was. You did the same thing going forward.
Yeah, that's what should be at that top. That's how I'm reading that top
Yeah.
chart.
So it's
So
just.
where's it say here, Nancy, what you think the tax revenue impact would be?
So
That's what
under
I
this,
did.
where it says taxable amounts under the current
Yep.
plan of 20, 40, 60, 80,
Yep,
that's showing how much tax is coming in. Under proposed, if you went 25, 50, 75, 100, it looks to me that there's 23, that would be the difference from what it would be. And that's taxable value, so that's still not the tax. It doesn't show how much Yankton County would.
that's what I'm trying to get to. What does this mean in terms of actual tax revenue?
You would have to, it would take an extreme long time to break down, because you'd have to go by every parcel And you'd have to assess it,
Yeah, but
separately.
she's already got the data for the last 5 years right here. I bet you
We could
it's
ask-
massaging in a spreadsheet.
We could ask.
What does that mean in terms of actual
I
dollars?
don't think it's a tremendous amount of additional revenue, but it is some.
If we were to take
Low
on
hanging fruit.
proposed one, proposal one, proposal two.
Yeah.
And if we were to approve that today, what would that mean?
I can
You know,
ask-
in 5 years from now, that would mean that fully, assuming the same development, which is an assumption. You know, if that's $1 million a year, that's $500,000 a year.
You want a revenue projection?
I'm not asking for that necessarily right now, Dan. I put it on the list here as discretionary for them, as an item for us to consider. But that's a data point that would be important to that.
At least we educate all ourselves on.
Absolutely.
On this.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting me bring it.
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what we're here for, is to get those ideas captured. in the room. Just for perspective, you know, going forward here, the idea or thought process that I have and then worked with a couple of you on is that we're doing this brainstorming, and there'll be new ideas that come out of that as well, you know, as we continue on. We'll start to prioritize and categorize and put something together and make decisions on what we want to now go work on. And probably at that point, break up into you know, 2, maybe 3 groups of people that, hey, I'm interested in that project, I'm interested in that one. And then take some tasks and go, and then come back, and we'll probably go to once a month at that point if I had to guess. And so then we'll put the feedback from that group, and then, you know, we'll keep the project moving from that standpoint. It's kind of how I envision this, going forward. So,
So far, it's kind of interesting, Dan, because I don't think anything's been brought up that we haven't discussed at the county level.
Well, it's not unusual. You and I bring it up, it's a bad idea. These guys bring it up, and, you guys can take full credit. We brought up a lot of this, but just doesn't know what it is.
Does the county have the discretion to not use this?
We do, the problem is what state law says, is if a county does not have a discretionary formula, a city can adopt one, and I think our city is great, but they could actually, maybe adopt 0.0000 And so it's really in the best interest of the county to adopt what they want than rather than not have one. So, I want to say that, if I remember the law correctly, don't quote me, but the county doesn't have discretion when the city can adopt one outside of their borders. It's kind of a weird law and why it's written that way.
You have to adopt this annually, correct?
No. Just, we adopt it,
Just,
one time.
yeah,
But you can change it
We can change
annually.
it, we
You
can change
can.
it anytime. And, you know, there's a potential, there was a law change a few years ago that would allow discretionary formulas up to 7 years, but I think that's. Because then what happens with some of these, especially industrial or, you know, in agriculture, a 7-year-old grain bin isn't worth what a brand new grain bin is worth. And so then, you know, the value goes, it peaks up and it goes down, and then you don't capture the peak on it.
I was thinking the housing one was a longer time.
7 years. And, you know, that is an option, I guess, if we want to incentivize housing and we've never really discussed it.
I would say if we're trying to maybe increase on, why would we implement a new one on housing if we're trying to increase the one on maybe commercial?
That bottom chart, which she reflecting there. The one above, I understand, but the difference in taxable amount, is she not showing the difference would be the potential revenue? So, bottom set of numbers there, where it's, for the 25% change, $3,751,217. That potential revenue.
Average year over year. There you go.
Right.
I think that's the difference between that 25% and 40% of this burden. I'm not sure.
I think it's still assessed value. I don't think it's revenue. There's no way that much revenue would come off of that.
Oh, you got, 23, well, I guess it'd be $23 million. So if your difference between your current and your, 25, 50, 75, 100. It's $23 million. I don't understand what you're saying about all the properties that are assessed differently, but is $3 million off of $23 million potentially correct? That would be the revenue off the 23 million.
That's one thing. And then the valuation of the property that would change and then what that's assessed on. So I can answer.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand. Or,
Maybe I thought problems would be solved. And,
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah, exactly. Genius.
if that's the difference, is your proposal.
Yeah.
Are you seeing anything coming through your organization? You know, you look at this and go, boy, if you could just do this, that would help.
Interesting. Thinking on it.
Yeah.
Especially having these discussions makes me think, and then, you know, we 15 counties, so what are other counties doing?
Yeah.
And luckily, our county, we are growing, but if you look at some of the neighboring counties, they're not growing. I think that we are, is good and bad.
And could you, this one topic, you said several times that, you know, kind of changing the appropriate growth, and if we bring the wrong kind of growth, the cost to get ahead of the revenue. Yeah, let me understand, you know, help us all understand kind of what that means, and just some examples maybe of these are the kinds of things that we'll end up spending a lot of money on before we see money coming back in.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the heavy users of infrastructure are ones that we just need to look at. I know when we approved a gravel, well, actually, we didn't approve it. There was a gravel pit that came into Ballin and we actually didn't get a permit ahead of time and was running through the town and busting up the roads and stuff. And we issued a conditional use permit for that. I think what we got was $300 for it. But what is the amount of damage that it did county road? I would think far in excess of $300. And so, to me, those are almost like a wealth extraction tool, right? Because all that was going to Clay County. It was a company that wasn't in here. All the jobs were going out. Those are the things that we need to be careful about. And just when we have a proposal, I would hope that it brings more revenue into the county than it takes out.
On a proactive basis, looking at, you know, where do we want what, and thinking about that as we, you know, probably build that out at some point in time. You know, there are things like that. So infrastructure, you know, roads being a big part of that. What other things are big cost hitters to us? Is it primarily roads? Is
I
that
would
it?
say one of the biggest things that we have is that, and then of course, I would say, of course, court fees.
So we have to consider where the revenue is coming from.
Yeah.
And what, 72% or 74% of it goes to the schools.
Yeah. It's a huge amount. Yeah, people come in and they write the check to Yankton County, they pay their taxes, and we get about 27 cents out of every dollar, but people don't see that. They say Yankton County and they first down and I on the breath.
But just make sure I understand what you said there, just from a mathematical standpoint. If we're growing, new housing developments, more people come into an area, more kids hit the schools, school has greater demand for the dollars right away. Happens year one, the kids show up at year one, but the tax and the house they just bought also shows up year one. So that's kind of a
Not necessarily, and
off a year.
so it depends. And so I'll give you an example, the Drotsman addition that we did out by Don on Deer Boulevard. Now that doesn't have a TIF on it, right? So when that gets developed, the county will start getting revenue. The rezoning that we did for Bob Law, those are gonna come in. But the ones that do have TIFs on it, while I think they're appropriate at times, the county won't receive that additional revenue until that TIF is paid up, usually 20 years.
Yeah, like Yankton.
Napa Junction.
Well, Garden Estates.
We have a big breakdown, I think I have it right. So, and again, we're at $156 million, a little more than that, of evaluation that isn't being fully taxed and coming to the county now. So, you know, I think TIFs are good for projects where there's no other way that they're gonna come in, but we gotta be careful about what we
That includes the non-taxable part, that
need. Yeah.
the churches and.
No, that, so now
That's another.
that, and we've asked, Don and I both asked this year, because we were concerned is what's the value of all the non-taxable property, like nonprofits.
There.
We don't even have a
Oh,
list
yeah, we have no
because,
idea.
because the DOE said it would take 6 months for them to assess everything. And why would they do that? Because we can't have a tax, but, I mean, I'd say you'd all be shocked at the value that can be, that's it's
So-
probably 10 to 15%.
So property or nonprofits, that's not taxable, so there's no revenue there. So growth in areas that are heavy users of infrastructure is one. Growth of nonprofits or non-tax
Well-
entities is another. Tips to be rolled in there is another, potential. I'm just trying to understand again where
Yeah.
the disconnect is at on the one-to-one cost versus benefit.
Well, and again, we have Pathways come in and give us a presentation, and they did a very good job. But they're a nonprofit, and they have the new DLC program. And we asked, the success rate is about 21 to 27%. So that means if they get 10 people in, that 7 of them are gonna reoffend. And what does that mean? Well, then they're going through the court system, and state's attorneys prosecuted them. We're paying the indigent legal defenses. And then actually collecting zero property tax off of that. So that's, that is a burden on the county, and I want to give people an opportunity to change and turn their lives around, and I hope they do. But that's just when people bring those into the community, they don't maybe understand the cost to the county.
So what's the solution for that?
I think that's been studied for 100 years.
No,
Yeah.
what's-
Well, the solution that I'm working on right now is I recently had a conversation with Chief Justice Jensen, and he is planning on trying to bring something to continue reform indigent legal services in the state of South Dakota. He's actually our biggest champion, which I'm happy to have him on our side. Again, we're the only state that's 100% on the backs of the counties. So having him on our side is, they set up the indigent legal defense fund in Sioux Falls, but right now it only covers appeals to abuse, neglect, habeas corpus, and those types of things. The plan is to expand that this huge, which will help us. That's the solution.
How many other counties have a thing like that? Like,
We are the one for quite a bit here. I think there's one in Sioux Falls.
I was thinking we're covering 4 or 5 counties, don't we,
Cover,
with our,
I think the last time they came in, we had people, 17 different counties.
that you can just Google
Yeah.
homeless shelters across South Dakota, and you'll be surprised at the limited number that there actually are.
Get all depressed now?
Yeah.
It's,
It's good to let these conversations go on a little bit. I think it's learning for all of us.
Yeah.
There might be a way though that, I get the rate of return and that there's some things communities to considering what are those things that we're willing to be, just a community that thrive. Those resources, that, on paper, it doesn't make sense, but for a community that there's gonna have to be some things in that. I do have a question on the TIF, and yeah, this was before I got here, is that Napa Junction was a TIF, but was that TIF for that road that went in? To mitigate the truck traffic, I believe. So is there something like that on, like that, is there a, maybe look at tools like that for a hog barn wants to go, so that it isn't even the roads, but yet, people want that, then you have to figure out what you're gonna do with this road, because it's probably gonna get beat up, something like that. Are there, I don't know all the economic tools.
Yeah, I
know what I mean, are there things that you would have to, you could impose on a business that might have a lot of traffic like that?
Isn't that part of the conditional use thing, or
Uh,
you state that in there?
it has been when we updated our new zoning ordinance, but prior to that, when to 20, none of that was reported. Because now we're seeing the problems now. And then the painful thing about it is once something is approved, conditions, those conditions aren't very specific. You really can't go back. So it's done. The only thing pre-zoning that was done prior to adoption of zoning, pretty much untouchable.
Thank you.
I also have another question when it comes to ag in Yankton County, as farmsteads are dwindling, like we're talking about back when there was every farm, but then there were also a lot more farms. You could see, but now it's getting to be where it's larger farms and more. So now we're identifying one person is, it could even be tractor, or it can be their semis for grain and stuff that are hitting the road, but it's collectively not a lot anymore. It's just one. And, with, wanting to bring families back or young farmers in, that, is that larger farm that going to be what they're going to have to get into, because the small family farm is kind of getting smaller. So I don't know if that's something that we all need to kind of keep an eye on, is, as corporate farming almost becomes bigger, so that I think that you're gonna probably see where it's going to be one farm doing most of the beating up of those.
What we're seeing too is, people on operations on the street that come. And there was some, up north, from Minnesota, acres, and so they're not even. I think there's been.
So to your point on the roads, I know that there was the road plan that was put together with like ABCD grading system on the roads. Is that still being used so that there are some roads that are not going to be maintained going forward and will get out of essentially circulation? And is that a big enough impact to help the roads budget, or does that plan need to be accelerated, potentially?
Well, Mike does a, 5-year plan, and he looks at that every year, and there are always adjustments that are made depending on budget, depending on needs. Yeah, that's looked at every year.
Yeah, so to your point of fewer people using the roads, are there some roads, and maybe from a utility perspective, you're both gonna cringe and say that's a terrible idea, Nancy. But are there some roads that actually should be reclaimed? Some of these big corporate farms that maybe they don't need that road in the middle of that section, and that could be reclaimed by them and used as actual ag production land?
It's a very difficult process, section line road. If you have a couple landowners, they can sign off to do it, but if you don't, it has to go to an election, doesn't it? Or
Well, there's,
It's the same landowner on both sides.
It's very.
Yeah.
But
But, in the past, I've been in meetings where hunters want to enter those areas, and they fight it. I've seen a lot of cases where other people outside of just the landowners are yelling about getting in and out of there, or there's, US Fish and Wildlife might have easements going through some of those areas. It's bigger process, like Dan said, than a lot of people understand, but but yeah, I mean, the theory behind that certainly makes sense but you know, our buses run through this area, you know, just all kinds of
It would
things.
be a road that's heavily used.
Yeah.
but When some of those roads have been degraded to minimum maintenance, and let's just assume there's no easements on there, because there's nothing else.
Sure, and that happens.
That's one that could maybe be potentially reclaimed, goes back into production, better for the county.
Yeah,
And
And
it's
that
just
does
one less
happen.
road, one less mile that has to be ever thought about again.
yeah.
My whole county, Spring County. In Spring County, they have one asphalt road going north and south through the county and a half width of the county. And their farmers don't bitch about it, because don't have any problems with dust and all those things. But they're all big now, all big. And if you farm 20,000-30,000 acres, you're average. See what that does to schools then.
But then all that traffic, all traffic gets funneled on those few roads.
Yeah.
And now you have a farmer with hard equipment trying to go down and the road and backing up traffic.
Well, it's the typical thing, just like the bridge we're doing right now, and then, you know, on their side, they're going, well, now I have 20 miles extra that I have to drive because the bridge is closed
That's
down.
part of
That's
the,
the
part,
way it works in Yankton County, or in Spring County, because there aren't enough people that.
Oh,
They're all gone.
it's part of the process though, and I see it.
I
Just gotta deal with it.
We recently got some traffic counters, and that's maybe specifically point to bring up, and what we've been doing when we're looking at. You know, to find the accurate traffic counts on those to see how actually be utilized. That's kind of what we did with 434 and Kaiser Road, and realized that, hey, these are the highest traffic roads in the county, and we were spending $80,000 a year pushing powder and gravel from one direction to another.
But on the other side of your argument. We got 4 bridges across the Jim River in Yankton County, and what, $10 to $20 billion a piece that rework those bridges. Can't afford it.
So I'm gonna call it a good stopping point here. I have one topic to bring up here before we go. Dan is familiar a little bit, but Brian Hudhoff has requested to come and take 10-15 minutes of time to present to us just some information. I'll read what he said. In terms of your understanding of my presentations, I asked Brian, I said, before I will let you come in, I want to understand what it is I want to present, get an understanding of it, and share it with you guys, and we can decide. How Yankton County spends money, earns money, and delivers county services as compared to other counties in our size range. He's put like 60, 80 hours putting his information together. He presented it once, it didn't record very well or something like that.
The financial meeting.
Yeah, and I talked with Doug Ekman, and he runs the other committee about it a little bit, and he's got some good information there, but because we're forward looking, not so much current state or where we're looking, that type of thing, I question whether or not there's value to it. I think to some degree, anytime we can get data in our hands to understand stuff, that can be helpful. So I wanted to check with you guys right now. I've got Brian on kind of a hold. He and I were going to talk and possibly consider the June 4th meeting. Which would be huge. You guys find value in that?
I would say I sat through the presentation. You can understand it pretty clearly, because he did a very good job on it without him presenting it. So I think there is value in us having the data, but if people are interested, it's interesting.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because I think sometimes we beat ourselves up in Yankton County, but when we compare ourselves to the surrounding counties and others of similar size, we're doing well. I mean, we don't always share that.
So, okay, so I'll let him know that we can do it at the next meeting. I think there's value in that. Some of this stuff, you know, we go deeper and further than one might normally, but again, I think there's value in having to take a long learning. Because from my perspective, not having been involved in county government a lot, this is all new to me, so I'm learning. You know, people sitting there bored to death.
No, I think it's, I like the dialogue and the
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah,
because I
yeah.
think that's where the ideas
Yep.
bubble up to the top, and then someone's like, oh, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good
Does it feel like there's more bubbling to do? To Don's point, this is all so far kind of been stuff we've talked about previously. Is there more bubbling to do here? Or discuss this kind of stuff before we start maybe categorizing and started working on picking out some ones to go work on?
So can we maybe have, to your point, like a map of the county? And maybe it's once we get back in the county chambers, just to take a look at that and then see if we're talking about different areas that might be suited for different things, just in general conversation. And then the roadmap, that would also be helpful.
What do you want in it, on the map?
In the map, I just kind of wanted to see,
Tell us what you want, and we can go to District 3 and
I was gonna say,
they
you
can
know
draw.
what you want, we'll make it
Well,
easy.
or we pretty much have most of those maps already sitting in the commission room, so,
I'd say a zoning map. of the breakdowns of what's
Yeah.
being done. And then, you know, and it's also, we can discuss about, you know, focusing things on state highway systems to reduce costs to counties. I think that's a helpful thing. And one thing I think Nancy brought up that as well, we talked about it some, but I'd like, maybe a little bit of time on trying to focus and reinvigorate our small towns. And the reason I say that is they have existing infrastructure, you know, what we're fighting now is can't get water, can't get wastewater. Those small towns already have that. They have that now, and then a lot of times their capacity, is ready to go, or maybe with some investment, they can get those. How can we get those towns going?
How do you propose we have that conversation around the small town?
Yeah, we talked to Rick last night. He's the mayor of Utica, and he's willing to try to get that going, and I can get with you and Gary and Bill, and maybe
sure.
we could, I think it'd probably be best if maybe Gary and I and anybody who'd want to, we have maybe a separate meeting and bring their concerns forward to you guys, and then from what I'm hearing, their concerns is they don't have any money, they don't have any expertise, and sometimes they're on there for 3 months and then they quit, and there's a high turnover. And so they really need guidance probably from District 3 and the town, how to utilize the state water programs and those things that are there. But we can set something up and kind of give you guys a mini report on that.
that would be something, actually, I went to one of the meetings that they hosted over in Vermillion. Murray, were you over there, the one that Jim Peterson? He had invited a lot of the small towns from around Vermillion, and he had Porchlight and USDA and 3 or 4 other groups come in and present. And it was, you know, towns like Yankton there, but it was also, you know, some of the smaller towns, Centerville or Elk Point, that were also a part of that meeting, so.
So again, though, it was in that case, that example, Nancy, that was Jim coordinating representatives from towns to come and learn.
Just, yep, it was just, it was an opportunity just to come in and connect with other communities of all sizes, and there was, the only agenda was those groups that came and spoke, and then the rest of it was just sitting at the tables and chatting with each other. So,
Which is really beneficial, knowing your fellow people get in their number and when you have an issue.
But you're talking about, Dan, is maybe going to those communities, understanding their hardships and things like that. So just as part of the planning process to kind
I
of,
think I'm gonna invite them to probably the county, because I know all the mayors already.
Yeah.
And I speak with them all pretty regularly, just saying, what are you, I'm gonna bring their issues forward and, you know, what are their limitations and why aren't they growing and how we can help facilitate that, because they're gonna have to have ownership of it. But just maybe have them connect with each other and bring that.
but it's the idea then to get those ideas and concerns and issues and get them on our list of the word list and the whole thing. We want to invite, maybe the time to come in and present.
I think I don't know.
It
if that
probably
would
needs to be
I
separate
don't know
to
if
start
that would
with.
be that helpful because,
Their issues are not gonna be the same of what is
Understood.
necessary.
No.
yeah. And
But we may find commonality that they all have this one issue and then we gotta make sure we build on that.
I think, we'll meet with who shows up and then, bring that forward, so. Cause a lot of them haven't even gone through on what they need. They're more worried about, getting this plug drain fixed.
Right.
Having this lady pay her water bill, so
Right.
they're not even strategically thinking a lot of times. They don't have that.
So you're gonna reach out to them and try to get some conversations set up.
Yeah,
with them.
and we've had some success, and a number of years ago, we did that with the organized townships, and I think we should probably do that,
Townships, there you go.
and theirs are more focused on infrastructure, but yeah, I'll work with Jared and with that.
I just want to remind everybody that we have a gigantic resource in District 3. They can do things you can't imagine. And if you have questions, please run them by. See what we can do.
Feels like at some point in time, we have to take 15 minutes or so and kind of present things that he can do and some examples and things like that, so we all understand. that. Feels like very appropriate.
On those maps, sorry to rehash something, but, that's not privy information, right? That's public information on the zoning and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Do we have, is that on the county's website or any of that being pulled up? Okay, and then, utility wise, I know we talked about that a couple of times ago, about laying those out, we work at Sioux Falls and we use things called DataWorks, and it has the whole city mapped out on all the utilities and where they're lined at and in the main lines on the easements, all that stuff. Is that anything that the utility companies have that they can compile through the county, maybe show where these things are all laid out so that, prospective developers can look at and see where power is, where sewer is, where the water is?
There is a state infrastructure plan that GOED has on their website. Because they had paid ISG and engineering company $1 million for their statewide infrastructure. But I
How
know
old is it?
it might not be the level of detail you're looking for, because I'm sure that you guys are thinking for safety and security. Everything is not out there on every map.
Yeah, I would be concerned providing where, just because of bad actors. I guess with us, it's really not. I guess, they will wanna locate where they wanna locate, and they contact us, what does it take to get it there? And then we work with them. You might say, well, like if a farmer wants to put a bin somewhere and they own a section, maybe that place right there, we don't have anything, but maybe in this other corner, that's where it's at, and consider relocating.
Something students are feeling and realize that also that local is free. Doesn't cost them anything.
Yep.
Yeah,
They think they're gonna get billed. Well, I don't wanna pay for that.
No, it's our cost.
yeah, exactly.
Very good. Thanks for everybody for coming today. Next 2 weeks from now, we'll be right here, and then hopefully we're back in the county building. We have maps, we'll have Brian present. And then, Dan, you guys are gonna start the small pass.
We'll send, we used to send out like that discretionary formula, all of the counties that we have.
Great.
Is that big TV, online, is that, could you put on that?
I think we can hook it up
Yeah,
maybe
he said
by
we
the
could-
next
we
time.
sure wanted to present something, we could put it on the CV. Absolutely.
Every time we make a change, there's adjustments to be made, but yeah, I think we can get that set up.
Everybody needs to kind of keep in mind though that there's two sides to budgeting. And all we've talked about is income growth and also expense reduction.
It's the other committee.
Yeah, that's not it.
Yeah.
We're just we're bringing money. We're the fund group.
They're, yeah.
They have to recommend all the cuts. not us.
They're in the, remember the clustering, yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll be.
Yeah, yeah.